She stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the dark water below, her heart pounding like it could burst at any second. In her hand, a yellowed piece of paper. The signature was his, but he was dead. At least that's what she believed. That's what the world believed. Until now. A black car drove slowly across the street. The tinted window rolled down, and there, reflected in the rain-blurred windshield, she saw him, the same eyes, the same face, but with a different name, a different life, a different world. The man she had buried 5 years ago was now the CEO of the company she had just joined, and he was pretending not to know her. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that he wasn't alone. There were secrets, lies, erased documents, rewritten lives, and a game far too dirty to be just about business. Now, she must decide, pretend she didn't see and stay silent, or risk everything, even her own life, to uncover the truth. Because loving someone who died is pain, but loving someone who chose to disappear is a minefield. And this time, Helena won't come out unscathed. Helena Langdon was not the kind of woman who drew attention with flashy clothes or a loud voice. She was the type of presence that grew over time. Subtle, elegant, deep. She was 34, with eyes that held oceans, and a posture shaped by equal parts discipline and exhaustion. Grief had come for her too soon, and even 5 years later, it still slept beside her. She was an architect by training, a planning analyst by necessity. After the sudden loss of her husband, Benjamin, in a car crash that was never fully explained, Helena had left the coastal town they once called home. She moved into a modest apartment in Lisbon and worked freelance for 4 years, all with a single goal: staying sane. Since then, her world had become meticulously controlled. Routine was her lifeline. Coffee at 7 a.m. sharp, emails answered by 9, French lessons on Tuesdays. Everything calculated, not to leave room for emptiness or worse, questions, especially that one. What if he never died? Because part of her never really believed Benjamin was gone. Yes, there was a body, but the face had been disfigured in the crash. The coffin had been sealed. The documents handed over by authorities who barely knew what to say. It all felt too foggy, too clinical, too convenient. Deep down, something inside her screamed. It wasn't him, but she buried that doubt, along with her wedding ring, along with a life they had built. Helena wasn't religious, but she believed in signs. And when she received an unexpected job offer, an international position in London, the very city she and Benjamin had always dreamed of living in, something inside her whispered, "Go." It wasn't just a career opportunity. It was as if fate was calling her to something bigger or deeper. So she accepted. She left behind the remnants of her grief, the neighbors who pitied her, the places heavy with his absence. She boarded a plane to London with one suitcase, a laptop, and the kind of courage only those who've lost everything can muster. Helena was now a woman of sharp silences, of quiet observation, and without knowing it yet, she was about to experience either the greatest reunion or the greatest betrayal of her life. The night before her flight, she opened Benjamin's old leather document folder, something she hadn't touched in years. Inside, she found a postcard. London, Tower Bridge at dusk, glowing in gold light. On the back, written in his handwriting, "If I ever disappear, look for me here." She trembled, but she packed the postcard anyway, because some questions only fate has the courage to answer. And it was about to speak, loud and clear. London breathed differently. The air was heavy, damp, rushed. Helena felt it from the moment she stepped out of the airport. The cab driver barely said hello. The front desk attendant at her building handed her the keys like a robot programmed not to smile. And the furnished apartment, small, efficient, impersonal, made one thing clear. She was far from home, wherever home was now. On her first day of work, the sky was so gray she couldn't tell what time it was. She dressed in her most neutral outfit, black slacks, white blouse, hair pulled into a tight bun. The blazer, borrowed from a neighbor in Lisbon, still smelled like lavender. She hoped it would make her look confident, despite the empty stomach and flooded mind. Wexler and Holston's headquarters stood tall, a steel and glass monolith in London's financial core. Walking in felt like entering a machine, grand, efficient, cold. She showed her temporary digital badge at reception, The attendant didn't lift her eyes. Sector 17B, Elevator C, International Strategy Office, 5th floor. Helena nodded and moved forward. In the elevator, she stood between rushing executives, all typing furiously on phones. No one looked at her, or maybe they did, and chose to ignore her. She was invisible, a foreigner, a newcomer. At the office door, the receptionist gave her that typical London glance, one that says everything without a word. "You're late," even though she was 10 minutes early. "Name?" "Helena Langdon. I'm the new project strategist." "Ah, the strategist," the woman replied. Not quite insulting, but not neutral either. She typed something and motioned for Helena to wait. She sat in a hard, narrow leather chair, feeling every stare from passers-by. Her hands were sweating. The blazer felt too tight. The air conditioning was set to freezing. Then the receptionist picked up the phone. "Mr. Calum is ready for you." Calum, the company's new CEO. A strong, mysterious name, almost mythic. All she knew was that he had taken over just a few months earlier after a mysterious leadership change. He was said to be private, brilliant, meticulous. There were barely any photos of him. She walked down the hallway, each step thudding in her chest. An assistant in a dark suit and earpiece greeted her and opened the door to a vast office, full window view of the city. And then, she walked in. But before taking even 2 steps, she froze. There he was, standing, back turned, staring out over London, tall, broad-shouldered, hands clasped behind him, a dark gray suit molded to his frame, and a posture she knew better than anyone. The world stopped. The assistant exited silently, closing the door. The man turned slowly, and Helena felt the air leave her lungs. It couldn't be. Not here. Not now. But it was. That face. Those eyes. "Welcome, Ms. Langdon," he said, voice cooler than she remembered. It was Benjamin, but he showed no reaction to her shock, just extended a hand, like this was their first meeting. "I'm Calum Bennett, CEO of Wexler & Holston." Helena froze. Her eyes burned. Her legs trembled. He didn't recognize her? Or was he pretending not to? She shook his hand, fingers trembling, felt the warmth of his skin, the same warmth that once held her at night, but now, cold, unfamiliar. "Thank you, Mr. Calum," she replied, voice cracking. "It's an honor." She left the office minutes later, no memory of how, skipped the receptionist, took the stairs, tripped on the last step, fell to her knees, ripped her blazer, dropped her phone. Some stopped. Others just walked around her. She gathered her things in silence, hands shaking. She returned to her flat with no idea how she got there. That night, lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, she whispered, "I'm not crazy. It's him. It's my husband. And he pretended not to know me." Wexler & Holston wasn't just a multinational corporation. It was a sealed ecosystem, a universe of its own, where every floor operated like a private kingdom of unspoken codes and silent hierarchies. The 5th floor, home to the International Integration Division, felt like the very heart of this organism, a space of steel and glass where architectural coldness mirrored corporate culture. Helena was placed in a discreet workstation on the eastern side of the floor, next to a frosted glass wall overlooking the executive terrace. It was a strategic location, not by rank, but by coincidence, or so they claimed. From there, she could see high-level executives in quiet outdoor meetings, shaded by designer umbrellas and guarded by security discreet enough to blend in. By the end of her first week, she could feel the weight of the atmosphere. No one said more than necessary. Every word measured, every greeting cold. Time. Merciless. Her colleagues weren't hostile. They were indifferent, as if empathy were a threat to efficiency. Her first assignment was a market analysis on international expansion. Helena dove deep into the data, built objective reports, cross-referenced global sources, and presented a solid proposal. When she finally presented it to the analysis group, the senior manager simply said, "This is far too basic. We don't deal in obviousness here." No one defended her. The next day, the report had been quietly archived. No feedback, no discussion, just silence. 2 days later, a new memo appeared in her inbox. She had been reassigned. This time, to a feasibility study on the company's entry into Southeast Asia, focused on Singapore. A new chance, perhaps, or just another test. The company environment pulsed with constant surveillance. Cameras lined the hallways. Motion sensors tracked entry. The internal system logged every file opened, every second spent in company software. Helena noticed quickly. Nothing in this place was casual. Not the interactions, not the silences. She began noticing patterns. Her emails were read seconds after being sent, even late at night. Certain files she'd saved disappeared from her drive, and coworkers she'd casually chatted with vanished. One day they were there, the next, gone. No one spoke their names again, as if they'd never existed. But nothing was more unsettling than the presence of Caleb Bennett, the man she had once known as Benjamin. He appeared rarely, but always enough to cause an emotional earthquake within Helena. Impeccably dressed, always trailed by 2 assistants, never smiling. He walked like his feet didn't touch the ground, spoke with a cruelty of restraint. It was impossible to see him without being pulled back into memories of Galway nights, rainy afternoons filled with laughter, the whisper of his voice saying, "You found me late, but it was at the right time." And now, that same voice reached her only through cold memos and strategic directives. In the 3rd week, as she reviewed guidelines for the Singapore project, she saw him on the executive terrace, alone, phone pressed to his ear, gaze locked on the city skyline. A common image there, the CEO, commanding in silence. But that afternoon, he looked up, directly at her. For a second, their eyes met, and it was like being struck by a thunderstorm of memory. For the first time, she didn't look away, and he held the stare for just one more second before turning his back. That night, back at the flat, the claustrophobia Helena had been trying to ignore became impossible to contain. The window was ajar, and the postcard Benjamin had once written on, the one she'd brought with her from Ireland, was missing from her drawer. Nothing else had been taken. Just that. She wasn't just being watched. She was being studied. And someone, maybe even he, wanted her to know it. At Wexler and Holston, conflict never exploded. It whispered. It was polite, controlled, wrapped in sharp smiles and carefully worded emails. And the people orbiting around Helena? Far from neutral. Even if, at first glance, they looked like nothing more than strategic pieces on a chessboard. The first to stand out was Claire Delacroix, Director of Communications, and one of the few people in the company who walked without rushing. French, elegant, always dressed as if she'd stepped off a Paris runway, Claire was both respected and feared. Her presence was always preceded by a delicate floral scent, and the soft click of heels gliding down the hallways like invisible catwalks. Helena and Claire officially met during a coffee break. "You're the new one, Helena, right?" Claire asked, smiling too sweetly to be sincere. "Yes, I'm in the international division." "Ah, yes, that project. Interesting." A pause. "Benjamin mentioned you." Helena froze. Claire noticed. She smiled, a sly curve of the lips. "I mean, Mr. Bennett, my apologies. I sometimes forget. I've known him for so long." In that moment, Helena realized 2 things. Claire knew, and Claire wanted her to know she knew. From then on, they kept crossing paths, at internal events, in corridors, in elevators, always with subtly pointed remarks, always with the air of someone holding information just out of reach. No one quite knew Claire's true role in the company, but one thing was certain. She had direct access to the CEO, and she liked to show it. Then came Ravi Patel, Senior Manager of Strategic Investments, who sat just a few desks away. Indian, formal, a perfectionist, and armed with a brand of sharp sarcasm he used as both weapon and shield. He was brilliant, and even more competitive. "Your presentation was creative," he once told Helena, in a tone impossible to decode. "But careful with creativity around here. Too much innovation scares the old guard." She soon realized Ravi subtly undercut his colleagues, CC'd bosses on emails without warning, revised others' work behind their backs, always in the name of what's best for the team. With Helena, he maintained an ambiguous dynamic, sometimes helpful, sometimes disturbingly dismissive. But threats didn't only come from the top. There was also Anya Morales, a Spanish analyst in her 30s, with restless eyes and a posture that screamed, "I trust no one." She was the only one to show Helena a sliver of empathy. "Can I ask you something without sounding nosy?" "Go ahead." "Did you know Caleb before coming here?" Helena hesitated and said nothing. "It's just, you look at him like you're trying to remember something. And he looks like he's trying to forget." A pause. I don't trust anyone in this place. If you ever want to talk outside of here, let me know. Spanish tea. I swear it's good. Helena thanked her. And for the first time since arriving, she felt maybe, just maybe, she wasn't entirely alone. And then there was Dorian Huxley, international board member, a powerful name, a rare but unforgettable presence. Older, slow-speaking, cold-eyed, regal. Helena met him at a welcome cocktail event. He didn't waste time. Helena Langdon, Irish, widow, correct? She froze. How do you know that? At Wexler, knowing things is part of the job. His tone was not friendly. It was a warning. He offered a half smile. Just be careful what you're looking for. Some answers come at a steep price. Helena left the event with a metallic taste in her mouth. She didn't know exactly what Dorian knew, but he clearly knew something. And there was a tension between him and Calum. Something unspoken. Something no corporate file could ever contain. In just a few weeks, Helena found herself surrounded by characters out of a chess match. Claire, the elegant queen who never missed a move. Ravi, the silent bishop, attacking diagonally. Dorian, the distant king who rarely moved, but controlled everything. And Anya, perhaps the only player still led by instinct. But the question remained. And Benjamin, or rather, Calum, was he still the wild knight Helena had once loved? Or had he become the tower blocking every possible escape? Helena wasn't sure what she expected from that meeting. Maybe a gesture, a glance, a crack in the armor, but nothing prepared her for how she felt walking into that silent top-floor room for the second time. The invitation had come via email, formal, precise, subject, strategy alignment. Please report to room 801 at 3 p.m. for an update on the Southeast Asia project. CEO attendance confirmed. Signed by Marcus Lyle. But Helena could feel Calum's fingerprints all over it. At 2:58, she stood outside the door, took a deep breath, knocked. "Come in," a muffled voice replied. She stepped inside. The room was large, framed by panoramic windows that captured the steel-gray London afternoon. A long table, empty chairs, and at the far end, him, Calum, Benjamin. The man she once knew in low-lit rooms and whispered promises now wore a dark, perfectly tailored suit. He radiated coldness like it was part of the air conditioning. He didn't greet her with a smile, just a faint nod. "Miss Langdon." "Mr. Bennett." Helena sat, held her posture, opened her laptop like it was any other meeting. But inside, her heart was pounding like a war drum. She began the presentation with a steady voice, laid out the data, justified her decisions, highlighted risks and opportunities. She used the same phrases he once taught her, back in candlelit dinners over wine and soft laughter. And as she spoke, she studied his face. His eyes were darker, his skin paler, his jaw locked, but it was still him. When she finished, silence hung too long. He slowly closed the folder. "Your analysis is logical," he said at last, "but your report still lacked attachment. You're trying to persuade when you should simply inform." Helena met his gaze with calm. Logic and detachment aren't the same. He narrowed his eyes. "Here they have to be." She took a breath. "Permission to ask a question, sir?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Have you ever wondered what someone does when they see a face that shouldn't exist?" The air froze. He stared at her, really stared. For the first time since their paths crossed again. "I hoped you'd forgotten me." Helena swallowed hard, her chest rising and falling slowly, her hand still resting on her closed laptop. "I never believed you were dead." "You saw the body." "No, I saw a coffin. And papers. But I never saw you." He stepped closer, stopping beside her chair, silent, then lowered his voice. "Everything I did was to protect you." "Protect me from what, Benjamin? That name doesn't exist anymore." Helena stood. "It does to me. It lives in every night I screamed into nothing. In every moment I woke up asking if your laugh was real or just something I invented." He said nothing, ran a tense hand through his hair. "I can't explain. Not now." "Why not? Because of the cameras? The contracts? Or because you're afraid I'll find out something that could ruin you?" A sound echoed near the door. Someone approaching. He stepped back, shifted tone, adjusted his tie. "That'll be all for today, Miss Langdon." Helena nodded. Cold. "Understood, Mr. Bennett." She left with her back straight, and her soul in pieces. Outside, Claire Delacroix was waiting, leaning casually on the railing with a coffee cup. Productive meeting? Tense. Claire smiled, eyes half-lidded. Tension is a kind of chemistry. Or war. Helena walked past without replying. But inside, she knew. The war had begun, and the battlefield was her heart. In the days following her meeting with Calum, something in Helena shifted. It wasn't just the emotional blow of seeing him again. It was instinct. That quiet voice inside that wouldn't let go. The feeling that something was wrong. Something far bigger than she imagined. And now, more than ever, she needed to understand why he had faked his death. And what, exactly, he was trying to hide. Benjamin, or rather, Calum, kept his cold, detached posture. But Helena knew the cracks in his mask. She saw them all. The subtle way his fingers brushed against his missing wedding ring when tense. The habit of tapping his watch 3 times before making a decision. The way his eyes would lock onto something when he was trying not to feel. Yes, he was still Benjamin. But something, or someone, had turned him into Calum. That week, Helena started receiving anonymous notes. The first was folded into a printed report left on her desk. No name, no signature, just one sentence. Do you really know who you're dealing with? The second came as an email from a non-existent account. No body, just a subject line. Go home. At first, she thought it might be some kind of office prank, or one of Ravi's passive-aggressive provocations. He had grown increasingly wary of her presence. But then she noticed the pattern. The messages always came after an interaction with Calum. And then came the napkin, written by hand, left in the women's bathroom drawer on the 5th floor, the one she used daily. They're watching you, and so is he. Pretend you don't know. It's not time yet. Helena froze. The handwriting. It was familiar. It was his, Benjamin. But why? What did he want her to pretend? What wasn't ready to be revealed? She began watching everything, and everyone, with new eyes. The restricted access to the 14th floor that no one ever talked about. The glass-walled offices with frosted glass on the inside. The security guards who seemed too ordinary, yet wore discreet earpieces in the cafeteria. One afternoon, while working on her laptop, she received a notification. Simultaneous login. Someone was trying to access her account from inside the building. Panicked, she went to IT to report it. The technician, barely glancing at her screen, spoke in a hushed tone. Miss Langdon, around here, we recommend keeping local backups and not sharing personal files, even with security. He didn't look at her, but the message was clear. Helena left the room on high alert. Her reality was cracking like glass under pressure, and at the center of it all was him. That Friday, leaving late, she found a paper taped discreetly inside her locker door, a printout of a draft email, never sent, signed by Benjamin, dated 3 weeks before the accident that supposedly killed him. If anything happens to me, don't trust anyone on the board, and if she comes looking, tell her it's too late. The document was printed on Wexler and Holston letterhead, but the edge was torn, as if someone had tried to destroy it, and someone else had saved it just in time. Helena stuffed it into her bag without a second thought. That night, alone in her flat, she laid out everything on the bed. The notes, the napkin, the emails, the postcard, the photographs, and slowly, the pattern began to emerge. Every clue pointed to a confidential project launched 3 months before Benjamin's death. A project, according to internal records, that was never completed. And at the center of it were names she now saw everywhere in board meetings and internal memos. Dorian Huxley, Claire Delacroix. At 2:07 a.m., another message arrived. Sender, null subject, you're closer than you think. Body, but be careful. Love won't save him if you uncover the truth too soon. Helena slammed the laptop shut. Her heart pounded, her throat dry. Love won't save him? Was that the real danger? Not just the mystery behind Benjamin's death, but his life now? Or worse, hers. She stood, walked to the mirror, stared at her own reflection like she was looking at a stranger, and whispered to herself, "You wanted answers, Helena, but maybe you're not ready for the truth." Helena tried to convince herself that she could stay focused on work, ignore the glances she felt, or imagined, pretend the cryptic messages never happened. But the problem was, the lie Benjamin had built was far too alive to ignore, and every time she saw him, even from a distance, it wasn't pain that shattered her now. It was rage, desire, and a dangerously growing thirst for answers. Their encounters became inevitable, in strategy meetings, in hallway exchanges that lasted too long to be casual. And no matter how much he kept his CEO mask on, Helena noticed the cracks. His gaze didn't cut like it used to. Sometimes he hesitated a beat too long before answering, and more often than not, he avoided saying her name. One Friday, they were assigned to present an update to the board, together. Side by side at the polished glass table of the executive floor, they navigated slides and market trends with eerie synchronicity. Their voices overlapped like choreography from another life. But during the break, at the coffee machine, he turned slightly toward her. They were alone. "You're stronger than I expected," he said. Helena didn't answer right away. She just turned the paper cup in her hands. "I had to be. Grief teaches you that, when it's real." The tension between them could have shattered glass. He lowered his gaze. "I never wanted you to suffer, but you wanted me to believe you were dead?" Silence. "Everything I did was for protection." "For who?" No answer. But just before another employee approached, he whispered, "I still think about you. Every day." Her world tilted. But the difference now? She wasn't willing to lose herself in him again. The relationship began to resurface in layers, stifled by the corporate walls, monitored by invisible eyes, crushed under the weight of everything unsaid. One late afternoon, he discreetly summoned her to a meeting on the 14th floor, a level rarely used, supposedly for restructuring initiatives. When she arrived, he was alone. No suit, no mask, just Benjamin. "I know this sounds insane," he began, his voice softer than she remembered. "But there are people here who would do anything to erase what happened to me. And now, to you." "Why?" she asked. "Because truth has market value. And some truths come with a price in blood." Helena took a step back. "Are you dragging me into this on purpose?" "No, I'm trying to protect you," he said, stepping closer. "Like I always have." She looked him in the eyes. "This isn't protection, Benjamin. It's abandonment disguised as heroism." For a moment, he looked smaller. Then, he reached for her hand. "I died, Helena, but only to the world, not to you." And when he touched her, it was like a memory coming alive. She wanted to pull away, but didn't. For the first time in years, they were alone, unmasked. But this wasn't freedom, it was danger. That night, she went to his flat, not because he invited her, but because she needed the truth. She knew the address. She'd found it buried in company files. He didn't seem surprised when she knocked. The apartment was too tidy, too clean, almost staged. "You're still being watched?" she asked. "I always have been. And you brought me here anyway?" He stepped close, stopped just inches away. "Do you really want to leave?" She looked at him. Wanted to, but couldn't. And when he touched her, really touched her for the first time in years, Helena realized something terrifying. She still loved him, but she didn't trust him. And that was a volatile combination. The pieces began to move, not where Helena could see them, but where the audience could. The story was leaving trails, fragments, clues that, on their own, looked random, but from above, formed a terrifying pattern. It all began with a name, Project Erebus. Helena stumbled across it while reviewing a compliance report. A single mention, tucked into a footnote. Confidential operations suspended in 2017. Project Erebus filed under top-tier clearance. The date stood out, 2017. The same year Benjamin died. She tried to access the linked files, but they were locked behind level 5 clearance. Access higher than most managers. The audience sees what she doesn't. Claire Delacroix accesses the Erebus files every day, and Ravi Patel has searched the internal server for terms like Helena Langdon, Benjamin, and staged death. Helena has no idea. She's too busy trying to balance her heart with her fear, torn between loving a man she no longer knows and uncovering something far bigger than she expected. In a quiet, wordless scene, Ravi watches Helena talking to Anya in the cafeteria. The camera pans to his phone on the table. It's recording their conversation. "You know what's weird?" Anya says. "The 14th floor cameras have been down all week. No one seems to know why. And security won't answer questions." Helena frowns, unaware the system crash was orchestrated by Benjamin. Meanwhile, viewers watch Claire enter a private control room. A panel reads, "Private surveillance node." She adjusts the live feeds. Helena in the elevator. Helena on the terrace. Helena and Benjamin on the 5th floor. She's not being monitored for security. She's being watched, personally. In another scene, Benjamin is seen behind closed doors, speaking via encrypted video call. The audience can't hear the conversation, but they see his reflection in the glass. Tense. He types on a tablet. She's getting too close. I need to get her out. Helena discovers a compliance memo listing a small office in Zurich, a subsidiary of Wexler and Holsten, with only 2 registered employees, and a financial movement of 4 million euros the same month Benjamin died. She doesn't see the connection yet, but the audience does. In a scene heavy with subtext, Claire meets with Dorian Huxley. No words, just expressions. On the table, a dossier. Inside, photos of Helena, of Benjamin. A cover page titled, Exposure Risk, Erebus Line, Unacceptable Personal Link. The tension is unbearable. The audience now knows Helena is in the center of something dangerous. A cover-up, a betrayal, and maybe a corporate crime that crosses borders. The next day, Benjamin brushes past her in the hallway. No words. But he slips a note into her bag. Please stop digging. But it's already too late, because now she feels it, and the audience already knows. If she stops now, it will destroy her inside. If she keeps going, it might destroy her life. It felt like walking on thin ice. Helena knew each step brought her closer to the truth, but also closer to collapse. And the worst part wasn't what she might uncover about Benjamin. It was what she was beginning to discover about herself. In the following weeks, something shifted. The smiles disappeared. Coffee breaks turned quiet. Her name began floating in half-spoken sentences, exchanged glances, and awkward pauses when she entered a room. Something had changed, and Helena knew exactly why. Someone was reporting her. Ravi became sharper, colder. He began correcting her reports without notice, CCing her supervisors unnecessarily, and, subtly yet constantly, questioned her competence. "Everything okay, Helena?" he asked one morning, voice clipped. "You seem distracted. Not ideal when you're dealing with 6-figure projections." She didn't answer. She already knew. In Wexler, attacks didn't come with yelling. They came with passive remarks and cold smiles that, stacked together, weighed like lead. But the pressure wasn't just inside the office walls. Even Anya, her one source of kindness, began to pull away. Her replies grew shorter. Plans outside of work evaporated. Until one evening, Helena found her near the lobby. "Can we talk?" Helena asked. Anya hesitated. "It's better if we're not seen together." "What's going on?" "You're getting into something bigger than you realize. I overheard conversations. They're watching you, and not just the board." "Who?" "Claire, Ravi, others. I don't know how much longer I can stay near you without going down with you." The words hit Helena like a punch to the chest. The isolation, the fear, the awful realization that she had no one, not even Benjamin, especially not Benjamin, because what consumed her now wasn't just what they were doing to her. It was what she was starting to do for him. That was the real dilemma. If she backed off now, she might recover her sanity, start over. But if she kept going, she would have to cross lines she never thought she'd approach. And then came Claire. It happened at the launch of a new global initiative, an event hosted in a modernist gallery in Soho. Helena had been trying to blend in. Claire intercepted her near the bar. "You look beautiful tonight," Claire said, smiling just enough to be threatening. "Didn't expect to see you away from the tower," Helena replied coolly. "Sometimes it's nice to remind the world the empire has a facade." Claire sipped her champagne and leaned in. "You know what's more dangerous than a wounded woman? Tell me. One who doesn't know how badly she'll bleed trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved." Helena swallowed hard. "He does want to be saved. He's just trapped. We're all trapped by something, dear. The difference is, some wear chains, and others wear invisible rings." Then she walked away, leaving Helena clutching her glass with trembling hands, her heart pounding in her ears. A week later came Dorian Huxley, not in a meeting, but in the parking garage. He walked beside her, hands calmly behind his back. "Have you heard of integrity, Miss Langdon?" "Yes. Here at Wexler we say, integrity is like porcelain. Once it cracks, it never goes back to what it was. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you that we all have something to lose, even those who think they've already lost everything." As he walked away, Helena realized her hands were clenched in fists. She was at her limit, and the decision ahead would be irreversible: to trust Benjamin and burn bridges with everyone else, or sever him for good and try to save herself. But it wasn't that simple anymore, because somewhere between fear, desire, and fury, Helena still loved him. And in this game, love was the most dangerous variable of all. What was coming wasn't a slip-up. It wasn't a forgotten note or a badly hidden glance. It was an explosion. It began with an anonymous email to Helena's personal inbox at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. Subject: see for yourself. No message, just one attachment: a video. She hesitated, then clicked. Grainy security footage from the 14th floor of Wexler and Holston. A private meeting between Benjamin, still under the name Calum, Claire Delacroix, and Dorian Huxley. The video wasn't perfect, but the audio was crystal clear. "The Erebus protocol is terminated," Benjamin said, fists clenched against the table. "You don't have that authority," Claire replied coldly. "The board approved a freeze, not a shutdown. Helena can't be part of this," he insisted. "She has nothing to do with it." Dorian looked up, assessing him like a disobedient pawn on the board. "Then maybe you were the mistake, Calum. Or should I say, Benjamin?" Claire added, in a near whisper. "You brought her here. Now deal with the consequences." The footage cut off. Helena sat frozen, her stomach twisting. It wasn't just confirmation that Benjamin was alive. It was proof that he was part of something, Erebus, and that she was the breaking point. Rage boiled inside her, slow and sharp. But this wasn't the time to scream. This was the time to strike. The next day, she climbed to the 14th floor using a borrowed ID badge, a favor from a maintenance tech who asked no questions, in exchange for her silence about a data breach she'd uncovered days before. The room was empty, but in one of the cabinets, tucked behind locked drawers, she found it: a black folder. No logo, no label, just one word embossed in metallic gray: Aribo. Inside, financial reports, banking transfers, encrypted internal memos, all dated before Benjamin's accident. But what made her knees buckle wasn't the numbers. It was a medical report clipped to the back. Patient: Benjamin M. Langdon procedure. Identity suppression. Reason: strategic corporate infiltration. Status active. She stepped back, 3 full paces. Her throat burned. Her stomach turned. Benjamin hadn't just disappeared. He'd signed himself away. He'd agreed to a corporate program that simulated his death, allowing him to infiltrate high-risk networks. He didn't just vanish. He sold himself. And worse, he did it before he ever disappeared from her life. That night, she stormed into his apartment. No invitations, no politeness, no patience. "What is Project Erebus, Benjamin?" He was unarmed, literally and emotionally, shirt unbuttoned, hair messy, face exhausted. And he didn't lie. "You weren't supposed to find out this way." Was I not supposed to find out at all? Or just not survive after I found out? He stood. "I did what had to be done." "You died, Benjamin," she shouted. "I buried you. And while I screamed for answers in the hospital, you were in Zurich signing deals under aliases." "Helena, why did you do it?" He exhaled. His voice broke. "Because if I said goodbye, I wouldn't have gone." Silence. They stood at the edge of a precipice, hearts wide open, feet ready to jump. "You chose to lie," she whispered, tearful. "And now you want me to believe it was all for love?" "No. Well, for what it's worth, what I felt for you, even if it was built on lies, was the only truth I had left." She turned, placed the Erebus folder on his table. "The truth, Benjamin. It'll destroy you before I ever have to." And then she left. This time, for real, without looking back. After the reveal, Helena's world didn't explode. It collapsed in silence, heavy, suffocating, invasive. She didn't return to work for 2 days, sent HR a brief email citing illness. For the first time since she arrived in London, she didn't open her laptop, or her phone, or even the curtains. She spent hours lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together the many versions of Benjamin, the husband, the ghost, the CEO, the infiltrator, like a puzzle she never agreed to solve. The betrayal wasn't just what he did, it was that he let her feel love while doing it. He looked at her in hallways with the same eyes as before, but behind them now lived lies, contracts, code names. And the worst part? She still loved him. Even now. On the second night, someone knocked. 3 sharp raps. She didn't move, but the voice on the other side was unmistakable. "Helena, it's me, Benjamin." She hesitated, then opened the door. There he was, under the dim hallway light, unshaven, hunched, wearing the guilt like a second skin. "I shouldn't have come," he said quietly. "But you did, because I can't lose you again, even if you hate me for it." She folded her arms. "Don't underestimate me. I can hate you with a fire you couldn't survive." He almost smiled, that crooked smile that once melted her. But this time, it only weakened her resolve. She held steady. "Tell me something," she said. "Did you sign that Erebus authorization? Before or after you looked into my eyes for the last time?" He paused, then whispered, "Before." She laughed, bitter, broken. "So everything after that was already part of your performance?" "It wasn't an act, Helena. I didn't know how to get out. I thought keeping my distance would protect you." "No, you wanted to save yourself. And you threw me into a coffin." He stepped closer. "Just enough. I'm still that man." "No," she replied, eyes wet. "You're what's left of him." He tried to touch her. She pulled away. "No, enough. Please, just listen. I have listened. For 5 years. I listened to silence, to grief, to doubt, to every part of me trying to accept you were gone. And now you show up, with your new name and new world, and expect me to just slot you back in?" She exhaled hard. "I can't." He swallowed, eyes red. "I still love you." Helena bit her lip to stop the tremble. "And that is what will destroy me." Benjamin turned and left, slowly, without another word. This time he knew there were no more excuses, because what was broken was the trust that held everything together, and love alone could never fix that. The rupture between Helena and Benjamin wasn't just emotional. It lit a fuse. The next morning, Helena arrived at Wexler and Holston earlier than ever, dark circles under her eyes, a look that said, "No more half-truths." The receptionist gave her a slight nod, but something was off. A thicker silence, a warning in the air she couldn't yet decode. She headed straight to her desk, logged in, access denied. Her network password had been changed. She tried again, nothing. Seconds later, the phone rang. "Miss Langdon," said a voice without warmth. "Please proceed to room 11B. The board would like to speak with you." She swallowed hard. When she entered the room, she already knew. This wasn't a meeting, it was a trial. They were all there. Dorian, Claire, 2 legal reps, and Marcus Lyle with that surgically polite smirk. No chair for her. She remained standing, like a defendant. "We've received troubling reports," Dorian began, with the calm of someone pouring tea before cutting off a head. "Unauthorized access to floor 14, leaks of confidential material, and more concerning, behavior inconsistent with your role." "What kind of behavior? Have you been in contact with the CEO outside of work hours?" Helena didn't blink. "Is this a formal accusation?" "Not yet," Claire replied. "But it could be. And if it is, then your contract will be terminated. And an internal investigation will be opened immediately." The heat rose to Helena's face, but she stayed composed. "Maybe you should be investigating what you're hiding. Project Erebus, for example." Silence. Electric tension pulsed through the room. "What do you know about that?" Dorian asked quietly. "Enough to know it could destroy more than just reputations." Claire rose from her chair. "Helena, careful. You have no idea the forces you're toying with." Helena didn't flinch. "And you have no idea the woman you created when you left me buried in silence for 5 years." She turned and walked out. But she knew. The clock had just run out. They were now officially against her. That night, Anya came to her. She was trembling, holding a flash drive. "Someone sent me this, anonymously." "Why?" "Because they trust you more than they trust me." Inside was a recording. Benjamin, from months ago, in one of the company's secure rooms. He was talking to someone high up. "If Helena gets involved, you pull back. She's not part of the agreement, she never was." "She is now, Benjamin, is. The moment you went off script and disappeared, she became a liability. If you touch her, I'll burn it all." It wasn't just proof that Benjamin had tried to shield her. It was proof she was now in the crosshairs. The next morning, Benjamin vanished. No show at the office, no replies. Company phone, disconnected. His assistant, "He's on a business trip." Helena didn't buy it. And neither did Anya. Together, they began digging, cross-referencing files, accessing system logs, hunting footprints. They found that Benjamin had logged into an internal server hours before disappearing. Someone had tried to erase that log right after. Worse, Helena's name began appearing on a list. Employees under risk review. She wasn't a nuisance anymore. She was a threat. And she was alone. In a parallel scene, we see Claire on a secure call with Dorian. If he shows up, we eliminate him. Her too. Are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm informing you that as of now, Helena Langdon no longer exists in the system. Cut to Helena, in her flat, standing before the mirror, passport in hand. Elsewhere in the city, a corporate agent types her name into the global HR system. No record found. Helena stares at her reflection, a bitter smile forming, eyes burning, chest tight, and yet, sharper than ever. Now the real game begins. Helena vanished. Or rather, she was erased. Overnight, she lost access to everything. Her corporate login was terminated. Her badge, deactivated. The apartment leased by the company, canceled without notice. She came back from work and found the lock changed. A detached note taped to the door. We inform you that the lease agreement linked to the corporate CPF has been terminated by superior order. She tried to call HR. No one answered. Tried IT, invalid number. In the Wexler and Holston system, Helena Langdon no longer existed. She spent her first night in a cheap hotel near King's Cross, paying in cash. She sat on the bed for hours, staring at the half-open suitcase as if it was all that remained of her life. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. She had become a ghost. And worse, Benjamin was missing too. For 2 days, she searched for him, scoured the city, tried old contacts, even went to a hospital where she imagined he might be, if he'd been hurt, kidnapped, or worse. But there was no record, no trace. Helena no longer slept, only dozed off. She woke up from nightmares where he knocked at the door, faceless, or where Claire smiled, cold and glass-eyed, whispering, "Now you know too much." On the 4th day, her hotel was invaded, not by police, but by 2 men in black suits, no identification, who politely asked her to come with them. Undefined accent, briefcase under the arm, eyes that said everything words didn't need to. She refused. She ran, down the fire escape, grabbed a taxi with what little cash she had, told the driver to take her anywhere far from the city center. She ended up in a boarding house run by an old woman who asked no questions. A tiny room, a broken heater, a window that faced the brick wall of the neighboring building. That's where she was now, vanished, forgotten, alone, and that's where she finally broke. In the dead of night, clutching a thin blanket, Helena cried, not dramatic sobs, but the dry, near-silent cry that carves its way through the throat like a knife. She cried for everything, for Benjamin, for herself, for the world she thought she knew, now collapsing like a farce scripted in power's shadows. In parallel scenes, we see the fallout. At Wexler, Claire assumes the role of acting CEO, claiming Caleb Bennett is on strategic leave. The board applauds. Dorian signs off on the final deletion of Helena's records. Ravi smiles quietly, knowing his promotion is near. In Zurich, a $12 million transfer is approved by an executive under a forged identity. The folder, Eribo. The beneficiary, classified. And on a surveillance screen, Benjamin appears, injured, locked in an unknown bunker, eyes swollen, hair unkempt. He tries to speak to someone, but he's handcuffed. The camera flickers. On the other side, a figure in a suit watches. We don't see the face, just hear a whisper. She needs to believe you disappeared by choice. It's the only way she'll stop. Back in the boarding house, Helena opens the old laptop she brought with her. No network, no access. But there's a hidden file, a video. She hesitates, then opens it. Benjamin, recorded days before everything fell apart. If you're watching this, it means they've taken me out, and I trusted someone enough to get this message to you. Don't come looking for me. Not yet. But no, I'm fighting. For me, for you, for the truth. Helena. If I have even one chance left, I'll come back. And if I don't, never doubt that I loved you to the end. The screen goes dark. Helena closes her eyes, and for the first time since this all began, she screams, not out of despair, but out of rage. She's not running anymore. Now, she's hunting. The tears dried. The pain became fuel. And Helena, now, was a different woman. The morning after Benjamin's video, she cut her hair over the bathroom sink with dull scissors, changed outfits 3 times, tossed her phone, tore up her passport into tiny pieces, and scattered them across 3 separate trash bins. There would be no more trails. If Wexler wanted her as a ghost, she'd be the kind of ghost that haunts. Her first call was to Anya. She used a filthy public payphone in the middle of Camden. "I need your help. Where are you? Where no one can find me, and it's better this way. But I need you to do something." Anya hesitated, then said yes. Helena gave her precise instructions, a specific IP address, asked for access to an old company server, an abandoned archive system she herself had discovered in her first months at Wexler. What no one knew was that she had already copied part of the confidential database, just in case. "If what's in there is real," Helena said, "I can take Wexler down in a way they'll never see coming." Meanwhile, across the city, Claire Delacroix advanced her plan. "Do we know where she is?" she asked during a private meeting with Dorian and 2 hired agents. "Not yet, but she'll move, and when she does, we'll intercept." "It's not enough to find her," Claire said coldly. "We need to destroy any chance she has to leak the data. That includes Benjamin's access." Dorian nodded. "Then we eliminate them both." The next night, Helena infiltrated the company's old admin building, now inactive, using a physical credential no one had canceled, a flaw common in giant corporations. Amid files and construction dust, she found what she was looking for: the original Eribo contract, signed by Benjamin, approved by Claire, validated by Dorian, and attached to it, a list of eliminable collateral. Her name was on it, from before she was even hired. This wasn't just conspiracy, it was premeditation. And Benjamin knew. On her way back to the boarding house, while crossing a side street in an industrial district, Helena felt the impact before she heard it. A car, high speed, tires screeching. She jumped, rolled. It missed her by inches. It didn't stop. It vanished around the corner. An attack. Direct. They knew where she was, and they weren't just watching anymore. They were trying to kill her. 3 hours later, Anya called from a secure line. "I found everything. The files, the transfers, even the video of the first simulated erasure. The dossier's enough to put Wexler on the front page of The Guardian. Save it to private cloud. Encrypt it. 2 copies. One with me, one with you. Then what?" Helena took a deep breath. "Then, we destroy them, one by one." But elsewhere in the city, in a soundproof office, Ravi Patel reviewed the night's records. She survived. Claire, seated across from him, slowly twirled a gold pen between her fingers. She opened an envelope. Inside, a photo. Helena, from behind, heading to a metro station. "She's alone now," Claire said, "but not for long," and she smiled. Back in her room, Helena cleaned the blood from her palm with a wet towel. Her back ached. Her knee throbbed. But her eyes? Steady. She plugged the flash drive into her laptop and typed a new email. To 6 major news outlets. Subject: The Truth About Wexler and Holston. Project Eribo. Attachment: Encrypted file password to follow in 72 hours. If I'm alive. She hit send, and whispered to herself, "Now it's up to you." The sun had risen, but Helena was already up. In the small mirror of the boarding house room, she stared at her reflection like facing a defeated enemy. The woman from weeks ago, with vulnerable eyes and slumped shoulders, was gone. In her place stood a version who had learned to walk through risk, feel fear without stopping, lose everything, and still continue. It was the first time in years she felt whole, because for the first time, she wasn't at anyone's mercy. She was in control. She dressed in the most neutral clothes she could find: dark jeans, a gray blouse, and a plain black coat. Tied around her wrist, an old leather bracelet Benjamin had given her on their 3rd wedding anniversary. It was the only physical memory of him she had left, not out of longing, but as a reminder of what she had survived. At the subway station, she passed unnoticed, walked like someone with no time to be seen, but inside, every step was a declaration. "You tried to erase me, but I became permanent." In central London, Anya waited for her at a discreet cafe tucked behind a deactivated art gallery. Wearing a cap and thick-framed glasses, her fingers twitched nervously. "Are you okay?" she asked. More than ever. Helena sat down and pulled a laminated sheet from her bag. "Here it is, the final execution protocol of Erebos. Signed, dated, with aliases and international accounts. It's enough to open not one, but 3 investigations." Anya's eyes widened. This could take the entire company down. That's the point. In the days that followed, Helena set everything in motion like a siege. She created false profiles, uploaded the documents to secure clouds, sent encrypted access keys to 2 trusted journalists, one in Ireland, the other in Geneva. She recorded short videos explaining the basics, in case she didn't survive. Scheduled timed publications. The plan was simple. If anyone tried to stop her, the truth would slip through Wexler's fingers like water. And then, she began preparing the return. Step 1. Find Benjamin. With help from one of Anya's contacts, a former surveillance tech who'd worked years for companies like Wexler, they gained access to a parallel network of security cameras. In one frame, Benjamin was seen being transferred from an armored vehicle into an abandoned building in Canary Wharf. Helena didn't hesitate. "Are you crazy?" Anya asked. "It could be a trap. I didn't come this far to stop almost there." She went. At night. Alone. She broke open the back door of the warehouse with a makeshift lever, used ventilation tunnel maps to avoid crossing paths with guards. In the basement, she found Benjamin in a makeshift cell, pale, unshaven, sunken-eyed, but alive. "I thought I was hallucinating," he said weakly, trying to smile. "I never thought I'd see you again." "Shut up," she whispered, kneeling to break the chains. "You owe me all the answers. But right now, I just need you alive." With effort, she helped him up. They escaped through the back, picked up by Anya's contact waiting on alert. In the car, Benjamin looked at her with a mix of pain and awe. "You've changed. I died. Twice. Now I'm what's left." He tried to smile, but there was no room for words. Only silence, and a pact that didn't need to be spoken. Back at the safe house, Helena began to plot the final plan. Because now, with Benjamin by her side and all the evidence in her hands, she didn't need to run anymore. She needed to rise and show the world who she was. Not just the woman who survived the CEO who died, but the woman who unearthed the truth and became unstoppable. It was late afternoon when Helena walked through the halls of Wexler and Holston one last time. Not as an employee, not as a fugitive, but as the storm no one saw coming. She wore all black, tailored blazer, hair pulled back in a tight bun, and in her eyes, the calm of someone with nothing left to lose. In a brown leather folder, she carried everything the company feared. Documents, audios, videos, contracts, proof. Her heartbeat steady, her breathing measured. She wasn't there to negotiate. She was there to end it. On the executive floor, employees watched her in silence. Some recognized her, others pretended not to, but no one dared stop her. Helena walked straight into the 18th floor boardroom, where, according to the internal system, Claire, Ravi, Dorian, and 3 board members were meeting. They were discussing the final stage of the Bennett legacy restructuring. Little did they know, they were the ones about to be restructured. She entered without knocking. "Miss Langdon?" Claire stood, shocked. "What do you think you're doing?" Helena dropped the folder on the table. "Me? Just returning what belongs to you." Dorian narrowed his eyes. "You've breached company property, violated confidentiality. That's criminal." Helena smiled faintly. Funny, coming from someone whose signature is on this contract. She opened the dossier and pulled out the top sheet, the Erebos Protocol, complete with dates, clauses, and traceable illegal operations. She handed copies to each person at the table. This was sent today to 6 regulatory agencies and 4 media outlets. In less than 20 minutes, Wexler and Holston will be all over the headlines. There's no stopping it, no erasing it. Ravi stood pale. "You're committing public suicide." "No," Helena said, firm. "I'm surviving your shadows, and I'm pulling into the light everything you buried." Claire approached, trying to maintain composure. "You think the world will believe you?" "No, but it will believe in numbers, in transfers, in signed documents, in videos of your voices threatening me, and Benjamin." Silence. Helena stared each of them down. "Benjamin is alive, and free. You failed. Now, either you cooperate with the authorities, or you all go down together." Dorian adjusted his tie. "You think you've won, Helena leaned forward slightly. I didn't need to win. I just needed to survive long enough to expose you. Minutes later, British federal police raided the building with search and seizure warrants. Phones were confiscated. Computers shut down. The board was suspended. The building became the epicenter of a corporate scandal. In the hallways, eyes turned toward Helena, no longer with indifference, but with respect, fear, and disbelief. She walked calmly toward the elevator when Anya appeared in the lobby. You did it? More than I expected, Helena replied, with a smile mixing exhaustion and triumph. Anya hugged her, tightly. You became a legend. I didn't want to be a legend, just wanted the truth. The elevator arrived. Before stepping in, Helena looked one last time at the building that nearly destroyed her. Now I can finally leave. For real. Outside, Benjamin waited, wearing a dark suit, leaning on a cane, a consequence of the forced imprisonment, but with his eyes clear again. The same eyes that, despite everything, still knew who she was. Ready to start over? Helena nodded. Now, yes, but on my terms. And they walked away together, not as lovers, but as survivors. On her phone screen, a headline blinked. Wexler and Holston, ex-CEO and board investigated for fraud, corporate conspiracy, and attempted homicide. Helena closed the app, looked at Benjamin, and said, Justice doesn't bring peace, but it's a start. The scandal shook the city. Headlines swept across the UK like a storm. Arabo project exposed. Megacorporation involved in identity manipulation and money laundering. Dead CEO returns and accuses corporate board of conspiracy. Helena Langdon, the woman who dismantled an empire for love and for justice. But as the dust began to settle, the world around her moved on. Only Helena's world would never be the same. Victory tasted metallic, because even though she had taken down a system, unveiled the truth, and survived the impossible, there was still one question she couldn't answer. Now what? Benjamin was with her, free, but an invisible distance remained between them, not built by walls, but by wounds, by everything said and everything left unsaid. It was time to face it. On a gray afternoon, like so many they had spent apart, Helena arranged a meeting. She chose the place where it all began, the bridge over the Thames, the same one from the postcard he had left her years ago, with the words, "If I ever disappear, look for me here." He arrived right on time, hair trimmed, clean-shaven, hands in his coat pockets, and that look, the same as always, but now carrying more weight than ever. "Thanks for coming," she said calmly. "I'd go to the ends of the earth for you." "You nearly did." Silence. "The truth, Benjamin, is that I still don't know what I feel. I do. You loved me, and still lied. Because I was a coward. I thought I could carry it all alone, and I believed that by staying away, I was saving you. But you killed me. Slowly. In silence. And worse, you made me question my own grief." He looked down. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." Helena nodded. "Maybe not, but maybe forgiveness isn't about deserving." She took a deep breath. The wind tugged at her tied-up hair. The river below flowed indifferently. When everything fell apart, I realized I didn't need a perfect ending. I just needed to find myself in the chaos. And I did. Benjamin looked at her. "And now?" She smiled, eyes brimming with tears. "Now, we start from scratch. Not like before, not as a couple, but as two survivors who deserve a chance to be whole, even if apart." He nodded slowly. "You're the bravest woman I've ever known. And you, the most real man I've ever loved. Even if you were half a lie." They embraced, tightly, long, without promises. Just a silent touch between two souls who had walked through hell. As they parted, Benjamin offered a soft smile. "You're going to be happy, Helena. I'm going to rebuild. And that's a start." Then she turned, walked across the bridge with steady steps. She didn't look back, because for the first time in a long time, she was free. The city carried on. Traffic flowed. Lights flickered on one by one. Tourists snapped photos of the London Eye in the distance. But there, on the bridge, time had stopped. Helena remained with her back turned for a few seconds after the embrace. Her body still buzzed from his touch. Her hands, still warm from the presence that fought to stay in her chest. But her heart didn't want to let go. She took 2 steps, paused, and then, as if an invisible thread still pulled at her, she turned. Benjamin was still standing in the same spot, His eyes sparkled with all the words he could no longer say, and she simply walked up to him. No words, no logic, just feeling. When they stood face to face, both were breathless, as if simply being that close was too much air to bear. "I wanted to hate you," she whispered. "So did I." She smiled with tear-filled eyes. "But love is a beautiful curse. You're my only truth." And then it happened. The kiss. Not a gentle kiss. Not one full of promises. It was a desperate kiss. Shaky, flooded with memories and goodbye. A kiss of two people who had loved deeply and knew they couldn't anymore. When their lips parted, there was salt on their cheeks. Tears. From both of them. "I love you," he said, voice breaking. "But now, I need to love you from afar, so you can live whole." Helena looked at him. "And I will always carry you, but I won't carry your weight anymore." He nodded. Their hands parted slowly, as if they were also saying goodbye to the people they once were. "Goodbye, Helena. As far as love can reach. Benjamin." He turned and walked away. He didn't run. He didn't hesitate, because he knew that was the last act of love he could give her. Helena stood there alone, with the wind brushing her face. There was no music, no traditional happy ending, but there was something far more powerful. Peace. That love didn't win, but it saved. And sometimes, that's all love needs to do. Weeks had passed since the day everything collapsed, and at the same time, everything was revealed. Wexler and Holston crumbled. Headlines around the globe exposed the corporate scandal involving internal espionage, identity manipulation, sensitive data concealment, and international money laundering. Claire Delacroix was arrested trying to flee to Monaco with fake documents. Dorian Huxley, charged with financial crimes, went completely silent. Benjamin, under his real name, Benjamin Langdon, gave formal statements, but he refused interviews, refused press. He didn't seek public redemption. His greatest form of atonement already had a name, Helena. And her, Helena returned to Ireland, but not to the coastal town where it all began. She settled in Galway, where the sea was fierce and the sky generous in its silences. She rented a small house facing the beach, wide windows, few furnishings. She lived with little, read often, wrote even more. She began teaching courses in corporate ethics at a local university, became a quiet reference for those who wanted to understand the hidden workings of power, not through theory, but through experience. But above all, she learned to inhabit her own story, without fear, without rage, without haste, because in the end, she understood that truth doesn't always save, but it sets you free. That love isn't enough when trust is dead, but courage can resurrect who we were, that there is strength in silence, power in vulnerability, and beauty in beginning again, even after losing everything. Some nights were still hard. She dreamed of Benjamin's eyes on the bridge, the touch, the kiss, the almost that still lived in some fold of time. But she'd wake with the certainty she had done the right thing, that she had chosen herself, for the very first time. One day, an envelope arrived by mail. No return address. Inside, a single note. "The sea is yours now. May it carry you to places I could never reach. B." She smiled, didn't cry, because now Helena no longer cried for what was lost. She smiled for what she had become, and that no one could erase. The Galway sky was a silent spectacle that afternoon. The clouds moved slowly, as if they had learned from her how to slow down. The sea danced in shades of gray-blue, and the seagulls soared overhead with the same freedom Helena now felt in her chest. She walked barefoot on the wet sand, the wind tousling her short hair, the light coat billowing behind her. She carried a worn notebook, the kind with a hard cover and pages that smelled of time. She stopped before the sea, took a deep breath, and wrote the final page. "One day I died, but instead of being buried, I was planted. I grew through pain. I bloomed among ruins. And now I don't seek happy endings, only true stories." She closed the notebook gently, stepped into the cold water, felt life pulse beneath her feet. In the distance, a child flew a red kite at the top of the cliff. The sky began to open. Helena smiled, not because she had conquered everything, but because she no longer needed to conquer anything to be at peace. She closed her eyes for a moment and whispered, just loud enough for the wind to hear, "May what was real live within me, and what broke me make me stronger." The sea carried her words and returned silence, because endings don't shout, they whisper, and in that whisper, Helena began again. Your heart knows the way. Subscribe and follow the beauty.